Hey everyone, welcome to Southern Custom Cuts. I'm Andy, and today we're going to be building this upper to finish off my first workbench. This will be the first phase of 2 of this project. If you want to see how we're going to get it done, stick around. So as you can see, my shop is an absolute disaster. It's just gotten things thrown in after project, and so I really wanted to take this opportunity to reorganize the shop and to create a space for every single one of my tools. The first thing to do is go ahead and measure out and then cut some 2x3s down to size. Now, who doesn't love a little fun in the shop? And I thought, hey, how about a little pistol game? Locked and loaded. I want this to sit nice and flush against the stud leg. So I want to say thanks to one of my Instagram followers who recommended I change the blades out and go with a little bit of a higher tooth count, and so it's cutting much better. So then go ahead, I'll do a little test fit, pre-drill, and with a little bit of a countersink, and then go ahead and we'll start sinking some screws in there. I'm going to use a French cleat to hold up the cabinets that I'll be building in here in just a few minutes, but I wanted to run a test piece first to see, because this is actually the first time that I built a French cleat. So, test piece worked out just the way we wanted it to on like the 3rd try. You get mounted like that, and then the cabinet will come down and sit on it like that. Awesome. And after a little bit of measuring and using my clamp to kind of hold one side up, I went ahead and secured it. Now I put the screw on the lower half of the French cleat because I'm going to come in from the side and drill in a side one so that I have one going from the front and one going from the side to add additional support. I'm measuring right now so I could put in a center stud, because I realized at this point that I need a little bit more stability to it because of the amount of weight that I anticipate it's going to be on there. So go ahead and measure it out, drop 2 screws in there, and then secure it all the way around. It's at this point I realized I'm going to go ahead and measure up the cabinets. Now, I had worked through my plans and I thought I was going to have the right measurements, but I decided I'm going to double check. So I changed them up slightly because of the altered French cleat approach. Now I'm going to go ahead and start cutting for the panels that will make up my cabinets. And so I'm cutting all of them at the same time according to my cut sheet. And then I'll use some pocket holes to secure them to each other all the way around. I find that's one of the fastest ways to go ahead and make tight, secure connections when gluing up or attaching plywood in this manner. Now, one of the things I did, you see the board on the left, I put that and clamped that in place so that it would hold the left side perpendicular as I attached the pocket hole screws. With that being said, I ran a bead of glue around the top of it and then just temporarily secured it in with some brad nails. And then I used the door as a guide, right, so that everything would stay 90 degrees. And now I'll come back in for the top there and add in pocket hole screws. Yeah! Now here I'm just piloting the holes so that I know where I want them to be on the other side. So you notice I did not put in a countersink to it. I'll put the countersink on the inside so that the screw sits nice and flush. So now I'll take some spacer blocks and I'll put it on the underside of the backside of it where I won't be attaching screws. This will just help keep it nice and level and make it easier to work with. And now with all my might, I'll lift it up and hang it in place. And you see that lower stringer there? Put that in there so that make sure that the bottom half is nice and balanced. Look at this fancy weights holding on that other half of plywood on my table saw. I'm always crazy paranoid that I'm gonna run my circular saw over top of my table saw and destroy it. So I went ahead and created a backer board. That way I could add additional French cleat systems to it. Realized it's kind of a tight fit, so I'm going to take it down and just run my belt sander over top of it to kind of clean it up and just give me a little bit more space in between. There you go, a little fist punch. And we'll go ahead and drop a few screws in there to secure it in place. Your wife calls, she picked up. So I realized that I wanted to kind of clean up that edging a little bit. And so after I took my thinking cap off, I decided I was going to run some trim that I had already in stock in my house. And so just going to clean that up and attach some trim around the outside of that edge to make it look nice. So that's about do it for this project. So one of the major things I wanted to accomplish was being able to add some additional storage in here, especially for some of my handled type drill items, you know, things like that. I've got a little bit more. I've got my impact wrench and I've got my hot glue gun, but a place where I can store batteries and then also handle in some of these other pieces. So I was able to add a little bit of storage in here as well. So I've got my sanders, my Ramen orbital, my 4.5 inch square, and then my handheld multi-tool in there. So kind of headed together. So I ended up putting on some little handles to the back so that you can reach your hand back and pull them open. But in here I've got my pin nailer and my brad nailer, as well as my cordless router. So I use that quite a bit. So one of the things I need to think about is where I'm gonna put my charging for my drills. So originally I was gonna put them up here, but when I put this into more practical application, I found that it didn't quite reach. So it was a little too deep, it didn't quite make what I wanted to, even though I put in the holes for it and things like that, but ultimately it just wasn't gonna work out the way I wanted it to. So I'm gonna rethink that a little bit more. I thought about coming out here at a pitch, you know, and so having them at an upward angle as opposed to, you know, coming out flat. I've got a couple of different ideas that I'm gonna toy with, but that'd be a phase 2 kind of approach. I just want to say thanks for joining me today along this adventure. So it took me a little bit longer than I thought, and definitely had a few mistakes here and there, so I tried to correct. But if you wouldn't do me a favor, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button down below. That'd be truly helpful to me, and I appreciate it. Also, feel free to follow me on Instagram. I usually try to keep these projects live with different things like that, and so I can get some feedback and really want to engage with y'all as we build together. So until next time, I'm Andy for Southern Custom Cuts. Thanks for joining me.